So, my name is Kenneth Deery, and I'm delighted to be joined here in the Control S production studio in PorterShed, though, as we call it, in the heart of Galway, with Nuala Kavanagh of Chicago. Nuala, welcome.
Thank you so much, Kenny.
And Nuala and myself are chatting, and it's focusing around Nuala being recognised by Coach Noone, the Galway Chamber President, with the Galway Chamber President's Award for 2024. How does it feel to be receiving this recognition, Nuala?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, beyond honoured, I have to say. So, born and bred in Galway, left Galway in 1985. And at the moment, I'm busy with all volunteer work. Chicago Sister City's been one of them. So to come back in being recognised for my contribution to the city is just such an honour. So delighted.
Give us a sense of those early days in Galway.
The early days in Galway?
Yeah, you grew up in Galway and you went to what we now call the Atlantic Technological University. It's gone through a few rebrands since you were there, maybe. Give us a sense of that.
The RTC.
Yeah.
RTC Galway. But actually, can I just go back before that to when we were kids? Because the Chicago Galway Sister Cities is a volunteer organisation. And it's voluntary work that I do, but I also volunteer for two other organisations. I volunteer for a food pantry and I volunteer for dog rescue. But in mentioning the award, I also want to bring in volunteerism into it also. And the reason I probably love volunteering is because I was brought up with a mother and father who totally believed in volunteering. And I remember the first time I ever volunteered. So it was when my mother caught me by the scruff of my neck down in Newcastle Park and said, we are going up to Merlin Park to the old people. And she was bringing a box of oranges and we each had to hand out the old people an orange, a single orange. Was I so embarrassed? And I just thought, I am not doing this. So she literally caught me by the scruff of my neck and threw me into the car and said, you're coming with. And I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And I didn't realise then it wasn't about the oranges.
Yeah.
You know, that it was literally about the chat and just a camaraderie with the old people. But since then, I've always loved volunteering.
I'd say you look at oranges every time you're in the supermarket and smile, bringing you back to that moment.
Every time. About the oranges, yeah.
And tell me about, I suppose, growing up, you went to the RTC as it was. What did you study and what motivated you to study that?
I did business studies. And at the time, of course, I wasn't the most studious person in the world. So didn't go to the University of Galway, but chose to go to RTC and under Bernard O'Hara, who was head of the business school at the time. And I actually loved it, loved business school. And then I did want to study further, but I wasn't willing to leave Galway. So I decided I was just going to go straight to work after I finished, and I did. And I ended up working in the University of Galway in the travel office, the Use It office. And that's where I met Seamus.
Very good. And that's also what gave you your love of travel.
Yeah.
And what year was that?
That was, 78 is when we did the Leaving Cert. So probably about 81.
Okay,
yeah.
Very good.
Yeah,
a good
80s.
Mayo man down studying in Galway.
Well, wasn't he lucky the road led to Galway?
Actually, when you mentioned Bernard O'Hara as well, I know involved in the Mayo Association in Galway. We won't talk too much about Mayo though.
Yeah.
And that's actually how I got to meet you many years ago, was through the Mayo Association in Cleveland and the annual Mayo Association Ball.
Yeah.
Give us a sense. So you met Seamus. What did life look like at that stage?
Oh gosh, it looked, I thought it was going to be fantastic. We decided, so Seamus was actually studying a PhD at the time in inorganic chemistry under Professor Butler. And we decided that when he finished his studies that we were going to travel abroad. And his first job was in the Netherlands, in Zeeland, Terneuzen. And we were just looking so much forward to an adventure. And we said whenever the holiday feel went to living abroad, we'd come back. But we did move back twice to Ireland, but each time then Seamus's job took him abroad again. So that's why we've ended up in Chicago.
You've ended up in Chicago, but there's quite a journey to Chicago, if I remember rightly. There were quite a number of moves involved, and obviously you got married, children came along.
Yeah.
Give us a sense of what that was like, trying to manage all of that.
It was fun. It was tough going at some times. I remember one time when we were living in Holland, we moved actually 19 times in 22 years. So at times it was tough. But it was fun. There was an awful lot of fun. We got to see so many different countries and that. But I remember one time even when I was sick and Seamus was travelling and I had Niamh and she was only maybe 3 or 4 months old. And I remember literally crawling around the ground and holding her while I was actually getting sick because there was nobody to call on, you know. So there were definitely tough days like that. But you didn't kind of think, poor me. You thought, oh, you know, I'll be better tomorrow. It'll be fine. You know, there's this day shall pass, like. But we had so much fun. I mean, we lived in Holland. We moved to Texas in the early 90s. And gosh, it was like a rodeo down there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so much fun. And we used to get home on a Friday and we'd say, oh my gosh, will we go, west, or will we go east? Will we go west to San Antonio? Or will we go east to New Orleans? Sure, we had the life. We had so much fun.
And the kids just took all that like a ducks to water, did they?
Yeah, they did, yeah. Yeah, totally, yeah. They enjoyed it, yeah.
Very good. And we'll chat more on that in a couple of moments. Coming up to Chicago now, I suppose, and the sister cities, and a big part of the richness when we look at Galway and the internationalisation of Galway, there's a very strong connection between Galway and Chicago, and there's the Galway-Chicago Sister Cities Committee. Give us a sense of how you feel that evolved, that came about, and who the key players have been.
I think, Chicago, Galway, sister cities, the relationship is there for the last 27 years. So, sorry, we're actually coming up on our 30th year anniversary in 2027. Started off, I think it was between Mayor Daly and, it was, if I'm right, it was John Mulholland at the time who signed the agreement. I mean, it was a great thing to do. In Chicago, Chicago is probably the biggest city in the world to have such a great network of sister cities, and they do it, of course, to enhance, their own city economically, and also in terms of arts and culture, educational wise, because they want to reach out to the other countries globally, and they do it a lot through their sister cities. So Chicago is really good at that type of thing, and to do it in Galway. I mean, sure, Galway is, we're so community minded, and we're great. We'll make friends anywhere. We'd stop and talk to a donkey. So the outreach has been great. Billy Lawless, of course, is my predecessor. Billy was the man who did not ask me to take over the role, who told me to take over the role, that he was having health issues at the time. So I'm only in the role for the last 2 years. But I mean, what a person to have to follow up on.
What was it like working with Billy? I've some experience in recent years myself, but give us a sense of the relationship with Billy over time, and of course Anne as well in the family.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I mean, you could not find a nicer family. They're absolutely fabulous. All the Lawless family. I mean, Billy was definitely at the helm of the family, and it's hard to speak of him now in the past terms because you still think he's around. But he was just, somebody that you admired. He was so passionate in Chicago about getting things right for the Irish community. If anybody ever asked him to do anything, he always said yes. Now, he might not end up doing the work. He might delegate that task onto somebody else, but he would never say no to anything.
Yeah.
He'd make that call or he'd do something for you. He was fantastic.
There was such a sense of sadness when, unfortunately, we heard Billy died in the last couple of weeks, and it brought me back to February last year. I want to say the Irish Network Chicago Ball honoured him and himself and Anne, and it was a whole family celebration, and there was such the story and the energy that was in the room. And I think there were about 500 people in the Grand Hall in the Drake. Yeah. And it was just, I think that captured the special place that many people held Billy in. Give us a sense of the Irish community in Chicago, because I've had the privilege of attending a lot of events in different cities in the US, and I just get a sense that there's a real vibrant, young, new Irish community. Yeah. Give us a sense of that.
There is. I mean, when we went to Chicago, we live in the north side of Chicago, so we live in a suburb called Libertyville. So we're a little bit outside, but we spend a lot of time going downtown in Chicago and that. So I'd say some years ago, kind of a lot of the Irish organisations were maybe not failing, but, just going downhill a little bit. Maybe people were burnt out in that. But definitely over the last few years, since just before COVID started, I think a lot of the Irish organisations kind of got a new refreshment about them. It was like new blood was moving in. There's a lot, like the Ireland Network in Chicago is a phenomenal organisation. That's been head up. The executive director there at the moment now is Margaret Rose Keating. She's doing a phenomenal job, I have to say. And it's full of younger people, just organising events, workshops, Ireland Network conversations. They're doing business networking. They're, covering arts and culture. Chicago, Galway Sister Cities, the same thing. We kind of revamped 2 years ago, and we decided to work on mission-based initiatives. So everything we do has to have a purpose to it. But we've got involved in so many different initiatives, even in the city itself. We've also reached out to the Irish Fellowship Club, which is on the south side of Chicago. to help them along, because their membership was kind of flailing a little bit. But it's just there's a vibrancy. There's definitely a young vibrancy of people getting involved again in community and trying to organise things, and also getting Ireland and their businesses and their arts and culture more exposure in Chicago. So there's more of that happening now as well.
Brilliant, and I think there's a charitable angle as well to a lot of the Irish community work. If I'm right, I know some of the funds from the different events go to a number of organisations. Just give us a sense of that side of it.
Yeah, they do. I mean, being Irish, I mean, it's kind of inbuilt into you. There's always kind of a charitable element, I think, as well. We have a great organisation on the north side called Irish Community Services, led by Paul Downing, and he's also on our committee, on the Chicago Galway Sister Cities Committee. They take care of, quite a few maybe of the undocumented in America. They also run workshops on how to apply for visas, just how to register for maybe different government, packages or programs and stuff that are over there. But they also run meetings for seniors to meet up. They also run kind of mother and toddler groups and that. So they're a great organisation. And then the Ireland Network and ourselves, we will do maybe some fundraisers, and then we'll sponsor different programs that we feel are worthwhile also. So Concern also has a large organisation in Chicago, and they do a lot of fundraising. The Irish American Partnership, Irish Funds. So there's a lot of Irish activity in Chicago. Yeah.
Brilliant. And in terms of the committee, so obviously you've taken over from Billy and had been working alongside him for quite a number of years. Who else is involved in the committee? And I suppose give us a sense of when you talk about mission-based activities, what are those? So
I have a co-chair, John Wren, and I think you've probably met him, Kenny. Lovely fella, I have to say. He's Irish American. And then we have a full committee, like Paul Dowling is on the committee. Niamh Quinn is on the committee. We have Jan Costner, who represents Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. There's a lot of people who are there for a long time. We have Anne Durkin, Mary Gorski, there's Pat Hagan, so many people, Michael McNicholas. There's way too many to mention. And we have new members just coming on. We have Brian Fahey coming on from Galway. And we have, Kieran Moyles from my Cullen is just coming on the committee now too. So, sorry there. They're coming on the committee. But we'll cover things, we'll cover like arts and culture, business, education. Some of the organisations, one of the projects actually that we're working on at the moment is a rowing project. So we have a rowing organisation in Chicago called Recovery on Water. And then there's a rowing, very similar but smaller organisation here in Galway called Row to Recovery. And that's run by, I think it's Carol Nash, Martina Lyons and Robin Winkles. So those both of those organisations are set up to help people who have recovered from cancer. Now, initially, they were both set up for those affected by breast cancer, but the programme in Galway has expanded to help people, to use it as a therapy for people recovering from cancer, because there were so many people who wanted to take part in the programme. They had to open it up. It's very hard to say no to anybody, and Irish people tend not to say no. But we've been working with both those organisations. We reached out to both of them about a year and a half ago, and we've been meeting up on a regular basis. The Road to Recovery here in Chicago, they were at a stage where they'd kind of plateaued, I'd say. They were in their comfort zone. And I have worked with Robin. Both of us have been working together, and they have just blossomed in the last few years. They've expanded their own capacity. They have new members. They now have members on a wait list. They actually, for the first time, they travelled abroad this year. They went to Lyon. And our goal is actually to get them over to Chicago. They're actually working with PorterShed. So we was talking to Mary Rogers here in PorterShed, and I mentioned them, and I said they needed help, maybe with setting up a business plan, how to get a board of directors on board, because they definitely are expanding, but they haven't got the capacity within themselves to deal with everything yet. And Mary Rogers kindly offered services from PorterShed and said we are more than willing to help them. So and they are now in touch.
Mary is another Billy in the sense that Anthony and more of the team in PorterShed will possibly be doing the work and the activity. Yeah. No, that's super. And it's lovely, I think, knowing you, the satisfaction that you get from building those relationships and I suppose curating outcomes.
Yeah.
And one of my memories over the years of the Chicago-Galway relationship is the annual events that take place in August in particular, when
Yeah.
the Mayor of Galway each year and the local
Yeah.
authorities travel out, meet the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. You've been involved in organising so many of those itineraries over time, working alongside Keith Finnegan and Joan and indeed many others.
Yeah.
Give us a sense of, I suppose, how you see that evolving over time and the relationships that have grown.
Yeah. So this year it was something else. Galway have sent out a delegation every August. I presume for the last 27 years. Yeah, and it is for the last 27 years. And then when Billy asked me to take over as co-chair, he did say to me the committee had kind of, not come to a standstill, but they were probably a little bit burnt out. He felt they'd gone a little bit dormant, and he had said to me, you need to talk to people and you need to find out, do they still want to remain active, and, get them to turn around and become more focused and work harder again on the bonding of the two cities. So I said, okay, I would. And we kind of brainstormed and discussed everything. And that's when we did decide to work on the mission-based initiatives. But what we did at that stage was I come back to Galway every year. We still have a house back here. We're very lucky, I have to say. And I came back early one summer and I met with the Galway City Council. And I said, look, you do come out in August every year. Let's try and focus on really looking at what you need. So do more of a needs analysis of what they were working on and how they could utilise the visit more efficiently to learn more that they could implement when they came back then to their workplaces. So we spoke about that, and in the first year they wanted to concentrate on learning more about commercial buildings being built in a green manner, so sustainability. So we organised talks around that in the first year. Then in the second year we talked to, that was this year, my second year of being co-chair. So we spoke to Galway City Council. We also spoke to ATU, Noone, current president of the Chamber of Commerce. And we spoke to Ivana Ryan, and we spoke to the University of Galway also, Mark Mellett, who's taken charge in there, and Aisling Lennon of the Sister Cities relationship. So we spoke to everybody and asked them really what they wanted to focus on. And they wanted to focus on workplace development. Mm-hmm. So we had some fantastic panel discussions around workforce development. Then we also organised similar talks with World Business, Enterprise Ireland. We also organised a visit to Matter Chicago, which is a large med tech hub in Chicago, and it wasn't just working with startups, it was about scaling up. And two of the med tech hubs that had started in ATU are actually now working with Matter Chicago. They had been working with them for some months prior to our visit, but it was nice to reach into them, into Steve Collins in Matter Chicago, and talk about those companies also, because they were local Galway companies. So that was great.
And it's brilliant to see that business relationship growing, because, as you know, Galway is thriving as a city. There's such a buzz of innovation, energy, and we've been very lucky with funding from Enterprise Ireland and other agencies, with Russ Nageltith and others, to really help create the capacity of those businesses to grow. Yeah. But the pathway to the US is so important.
Yeah, it is.
And these relationships and people like yourselves and the Sister Cities Committee really helps build out that. Obviously, the IDA have a brilliant office in Chicago as well and are very active, I know, from different meetings, and again all get involved in the annual activities that you organise. Yeah. Given where you're at now, and I suppose the structures that you've in place and the committee, the people involved, what would good look like over the next few years? What are your ambitions and hopes as co-chair, yourself and John?
It's getting so busy. John said to me the other day, he said, you need to stop talking to people. And I was like, you'll never stop me talking to people. But like, we've so many projects on the go now, it's crazy. But we'll take them on. I mean, the more the merrier. And if we can help somebody out, of course we'll do it, Kenny. I mean, what we'd love to see is, on the Galway side, we'd love to see a structured committee. And that has to come from City Council and the Mayor's office. So, and how we would visualise it is something similar to what we have in Chicago. And that's just a structured committee who meet on a regular basis and just talk about, the projects that are ongoing and the relationship with Chicago and how we can both work better together on on both sides of the Atlantic to help each other. It's not just Chicago helping Galway. Galway will also be helping Chicago, from the other side. I mean, look at PorterShed. There's nothing to stop us bringing people over here and taking a look at PorterShed. You've done such a phenomenal job in here. It's unreal.
Absolutely, no. And there's great energy within the team here and huge ambition in terms of growing under the chairmanship of Maurice O'Gorman. And I know you hosted Maurice and Mary in Chicago last month when they were over with Notre Dame. In terms of the award and the recognition this week itself and the focus of the Chamber Awards, the President's recipient is always a centrepiece to the night. And if we look at the alumni who have received that over time, you have the likes of Mary herself, you have Pat McDonough, you have quite a list of names of business leaders, Gary Hines, John Power from Erigen, who of course has a great footprint in Chicago as well. How does it feel at that personal level, and will this energise you for fear of John and others to even do more?
Probably, yeah. I'd say John is petrified, totally petrified. I honestly never expected anything like this. And I mean, you don't do it for awards, obviously, So, I mean, to get an award like this is absolutely phenomenal. It's huge recognition. And as I said, you definitely don't do it for awards, but it is fantastic. And it's, I actually got a similar award last year in Chicago. In my first year as co-chair for Chicago Galway Sister Cities, I was the recipient of the Volunteer of the Year award over in Chicago. And I have to say, this one means so much. And I think it's because Galway is my hometown, that it just means, not that it's so much, it does mean more. It does, definitely, yeah. Because I'm from here and that, and you do the work, not for the recognition, but to help Galway. I love connecting people. I love seeing things happen when you do connect. Like if I see something and if I'm looking at a glass of water on the table and there's a chip on it, I think, okay, how can I fix that? Okay, I'm looking at it and mentally I'm working out how can I fix that so it'll work better the next time. There's just something in my brain that just keeps having to connect things, get them fixed, work out solutions. I don't see obstacles. I see opportunities that... So, yeah, to get an award is amazing. But, yeah, nerve-wracking at the same time, yeah.
Absolutely. And who's going, in addition to obviously a packed house, who are looking forward to a great night celebrating all that's good in the business community in Galway, who is travelling over from Chicago, or who's going to be there on the night from family?
Yeah, Seamus is here. Yeah.
Very good.
The kids couldn't. They're so busy with work and that. But we will be over. They'll be over in June. We have a family reunion in June of the local family in Galway, so we'll all be back for a month at that stage.
Very good. I can only imagine the meetings that'll be set up during that month as well.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure, and it's so fitting knowing you for probably the guts of a decade, if not more, at this stage, and seeing the energy that you bring in Chicago, but indeed in other cities in the US as well, as you attend Irish events, support Irish events, both yourself and Seamus. It's a real privilege to have this conversation with you, as I say, in the Control S production studio here in PorterShed, and I wish you the very best of luck in the year ahead as co-chair, yourself and John, and we look forward to seeing great things flourish from the relationship, and just Comhghairdeachas for everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nuala.
Thank you so much, Kenny.